Hi, I'm Paul from the Studio Rats. In today's video, we're going to be comparing these two, which is the Strymon Iridium and the Boss IR200. The Strymon Iridium came out some time ago, and it almost seems that what Boss have done with the IR200 is to take all the bits that were lacking from the Strymon Iridium and put them inside the IR200. So let's go through some of the differences between the two units. The IR200 has 128 memories. The Iridium has two. You've basically got the controls that you set on the front of the unit, and then you've got this favourite button. Inside the IR200 you get 154 different cab impulses, and these are made by Boss and Celestion. And inside the Iridium you get 9 different impulses. In addition to the built-in IRs inside the IR200, you've got 128 different user slots. And you can load different IRs into the Iridium, and this is also done via software. The Strymon Iridium has 3 different amps, while the Boss IR200 has 8 guitar amps and 3 different bass amps. One of my favourite features inside the IR200 is the Ambience Controls. We get 3 different, completely different reverbs. While the Strymon Iridium really has one reverb, but you can choose 3 different types of that one reverb. The IR200 has an effects loop, while the Strymon Iridium doesn't have an effects loop. The IR200 makes it much easier to incorporate external effects, things like delays and reverbs. The IR200 also has a noise gate, and the IR200 has 2 extra EQs, which is programmable per patch. As you can see, there's not a lot of size difference between the two. The main difference between the IR200 and the Iridium is that the IR200 has a screen, so that's taking up the extra space on the pedal. On the Iridium, you've got the choice of 3 different amps here. You've got round, chime and punch. While, as I said earlier, there's 11 different amps on the IR200, and you change the amps by using this control here. And one of the useful things on the IR200 is that you can go up and down the patches by using these 2 buttons here. In this video, what we're going to concentrate on are the sounds that are built into the Iridium compared to the sounds that are in the IR200. I'm going to start off by comparing the different sort of amplifiers that the Iridium has with the IR200, like the round, the chime and the punch. The round's like a Fender amp, the chime is like an AC30 and the punch is like a Marshall style amp. On the Iridium, you've got 3 different cab choices per amplifier, and you can choose them by switching down this button here. And on the IR200 you've actually got 154 different IR choices, and also you can load in your own IRs. You can load in IRs into the Iridium, and that's done via an app. So let's start with the sound of the Iridium. This is on the Fender style amp. As you can see, this is with the controls more or less at 12 o'clock. Now let's switch over to the IR200. This is with the controls again at about 12 o'clock. Immediately you'll notice the quality of the reverb with the IR200. I'm not saying that the quality of the reverb isn't great on the Strymon, but it's not really meant to be a reverb. It's meant to be like an ambience. It's meant to be like a room sort of sound. With the IR200 you can go much more in depth with the different reverbs, and there are 3 different types of completely different reverb. While on the Iridium there's 1 type of reverb, but you've got 3 different settings. You've got like a small setting, a medium and a large. On the Iridium at the moment I'm on the large setting, and it's like this. So if I turn up the room, it's a good sounding room, but for me, I don't want to take around a separate reverb device if I'm using this as my recording device, or if I'm using this as my silent stage rig. I just want to plug my pedals into this unit and then go straight to the front of house or into my recording interface. So this is the Iridium. And now the IR200. Sticking with the IR200, the gain control on this goes far beyond what you could get on, say, like a standard sort of tweed amp. And that's why I really like this, because you get the character of the tweed amp, but you can really push the drive sounds to get far past what you can with the tweed amp. If I now go back to the Iridium, and we turn the drive up, that's the maximum amount of drive that you can get out of this unit. Now you can use the EQ to drive things a little bit further, but that's really about it. So if I try out the different cabs on the Iridium, and now the IR200. A few years ago when Boss brought out the GT1000, they really sorted out how a guitar feels with these sort of effects units. Now, what I mean by that is when I plug into, say, like another effects unit, you don't get the immediacy that you do get with something like the Boss GT1000 or the IR200. It really feels incredibly reactive. It does feel really good with the Iridium, but there's an immediacy with the IR200 that does feel more valve amp-like. Earlier I explained how to change the IR cab responses on the Iridium, but if you want to do the same thing on the IR200, as I said, there's a load more in the IR200. I think there's 154. All you have to do is to, you can change the different cabs by turning this knob here, and you can actually have two completely different cabs, one on the left, one on the right. So you're not restricted to one stereo IR coming through both speakers. What you can do is to have a completely different IR on one side and a completely different IR on the other side. Just sticking with that tweed sound at the moment, let me bring in an overdrive pedal from my pedal board here just to show how well the IR200 reacts with overdrive pedals. So I'll do a clon first. And I'll bring in a tube screamer. And now let's try the same thing with the Iridium. First of all, let's do the clon style pedal. And now a tube screamer. For me, there seems to be more dynamic range with the IR200. It seems to take pedals really, really well. Now let's try the AC30 style sound. Let's switch to the Iridium first. The middle control on this sort of works like your cut feature on an AC30 amp. Let's see how far it can drive. And let's switch over to the IR200. Now there's definitely some extra clarity that you get with the IR200. Whether it sounds completely like an AC30 and whether the Iridium sounds like an AC30, you'd have to have an AC30 to compare it. But I love the clarity you get from the IR200. Right, let's see how far you can drive it. And lastly, let's try the Marshall setting. Again, we'll start with the Iridium. And let's try the different cabs. Now for me, cab 1 definitely works the best on this. The Marshall setting on the Iridium does sound great, but out of this whole unit, that's the highest gain sound that you're going to get out of it. And let's switch over to the IR200. The Marshall setting on the IR200 has got this crispy brightness, something that you get from like a Plexi. Let's turn the drive up. Let's crank it up full. You can definitely get more gain out of the IR200, but as you'll notice, as we're increasing the gain, we're starting to get a bit more noise, and that's inherent with anything, whether you're using an amp, whether you're using pedals, or whether you're using something like this. But one of the features of the IR200 is it's got a noise gate. So if we go into menu, we go into memory, we click on the noise suppressor. Now hopefully, as you can hear, that's really sorted out any added noise, and that's going to be really appreciated by any recording or front of house engineer. Now they've both got headphone outputs, but the added benefit of the IR200, if you've ever used any of the Wazza headphones, you'll notice the amazing surround sound that you get from the Wazza headphones. I don't mean the actual gyroscopic movements that you get from it, because obviously you don't get that with a pedal like this, but the sound. Now when you plug in headphones into this unit, which obviously I can't demonstrate, but when you do plug in headphones, you get this amazing ambience, which does actually feel like you've got a really nice sounding amp in a room. Now this is where we can move on with the IR200, because we've basically covered everything the Iridium does. But as I said with the IR200, you've got far more amplifiers. So let's go through some of those extra amps. The first amp is a natural. Then we've got the JC120, which is really great for sort of pristine, clean sounds. Then we've got our twin combo. We've got the diamond amp, which is like the AC30, which we demonstrated earlier. We've got the tweed combo, again, which we demonstrated earlier. Next, we've got the X high gain. This is an amp that's been ported over from the GT1000. And if you're a fan of that amp on the GT1000, you won't be disappointed with this. For me, I much prefer this over the Marshall style amp inside the IR200. If I'm doing some more high gain stuff, this is the amp that I would use. Then we've got the British Stack, which is like the Marshall amp we demonstrated earlier. And then we've got like the Bogner style amp, which is like the really sort of high gain heavy amp. And then we've got all our bass amps. We've got natural bass, X-Drive bass, and concert bass. Again, as I said earlier, we've got 3 different reverb types. Now, the one that I love on this is the hall reverb. If I turn it up way past what I'd normally use, you can get some really nice sort of ambient settings out of it. And if we want to deep dive into our reverbs, we click on the ambience button, and then we can choose between the different types of reverbs. So we've got hall, studio, and room. So there you have it. Now both units are great. I'm sure if you bought either one, you'd be really happy. For me, the IR200 wins hands down. You've got far more functionality with it. I can really just take this out. If I was doing like a flyaway gig, or I was doing a gig where it was a silent stage and I couldn't actually take my pedal board, I'd actually be happy using this because I could actually generate all the sounds that I would need from a gig just with this one unit. Now with the Iridium, I don't think I could just take that out. It does sound great, but I would need an extra reverb to get the sort of more ambient effects out of it. With the IR200, as I said, everything's built in. Anyway, I really hope you guys got something out of this. If you did get something out of it, don't forget to like and subscribe. Click on the bell button and you'll be notified of any future video that comes out from the Studio Rats. I'm Paul and I'll see you next time. Cheers.